Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Click with JFCS. Sorry we had a little bit of a late start due to technical problems, but glad you are all with us and joining us for tonight's live discussion on caring for older adult parents during a pandemic. My name is Sheree Bloch, and I am your moderator for the evening. I am a member of the board of directors of JFCS, and I am so proud of the work that JFCS has done during this pandemic and the resources that they are providing to our community. They say that doctors and nurses save lives and that social workers teach us how to live. Never has that been more apparent than during this crisis. With us this evening are two JFCS clinical social workers, Brenda Edelman, hi Brenda, JFCS Hi. Assistant Director of Older Adults, and Michael Byrne, JFCS Mobile Therapist for Older Adults. Also joining us is Deborah Bornstein, JFCS Director of Donor and Event Operations. So if anyone has any questions, there's a little chat bar on the side. Feel free to post your questions and we'll try to get to all of them. I have 4 octogenarians in my family, 2 living together independently in their own home with an aide, and 2 living in independent living. So I am in the thick of it together with people who are watching this. And I was hoping that we could start with you, Michael. You're in the field. I was hoping you could frame the issue as it relates to our older parents and help us to understand what our parents are going through.
Well, on the best of days for my clients, they are by and large isolated and lonely. And as we know from evidence that loneliness affects us emotionally as well as physically. And during this pandemic, they really are isolated. So they're not only isolated from their regular routine, which can be isolating, but they're like super isolated. So when checking in with them, they are really struggling with connection. And they struggle with computers and telephones and Zoom, and all of that is a struggle for them, right? I think a couple folks went to Zoom Seders, which was really wonderful. But I think a lot of families out there can attest that was not an easy thing to get grandma on the Zoom Seder.
That's true, Michael. We did the Zoom Seder, and we had one set that had a lot of difficulty. And my parents were able to do it. And my dad actually called the next day. And exactly what you said, he said to me, he did not realize how much he missed talking with other people. So we've now started once a week, we're doing a Zoom dinner with my parents because they now know how to do it. So It opened up that door for us, which was great. Brenda, can you give us a little bit, frame the adult-child's issue? Because we know there are a lot of relationship dynamics and things that go on between the children and the parents.
You know, so often we think of the adult children, we've used different expressions to describe this population over the years, but right now they must feel like a sandwich, because in most families, most households, adult children are facing the reality that their children that they thought they launched are now back home. Everybody's smiling right now. In addition to that, the children that they have that were attending college have been completely uprooted. As the phrase one of my daughters would use, displaced. They are now living at home. So the adult children, mom and dad, not only are back to really being mom and dad full-time around the clock with not a lot of respite because everybody is sanctioned to be home, but they're also concerned, rightfully so, about, like you said, Sheree, about their adult parents, that even if they're living independently or they're at an assisted living, they really don't have access.
It's true. That's very true. And not only do they not have access, I find it's hard to really know what's going on. Every day, how are you? And I'm not really asking enough questions. Do you have suggestions for questions we can ask, conversations we can have? How can we find out how they're really doing? Because I think that our parents put up a facade of, I'm fine, everything's fine.
Right. So I think one thing that I do is I say, well, tell me about your week. What did you do this week? And I'll wait for a moment where they say something, well, then I lost my phone and I lost my phone for a day and a half. And how did that feel? So then now we're in the feeling land. Now we're getting into feelings and we're talking about the feelings around the phone. And then that kind of cascades into other feelings, right? So that finding any kind of way, what'd you do this morning? How have you been eating? How's sleep going? You know, have you had any weird dreams? I've been having weird dreams. Have you had any weird dreams?
So we have, I find that a lot of my friends' parents are going out. You know, they're supposed to be in quarantine and they're going to the market. And, you know, this is a very vulnerable population. So how do we handle that? How do they handle that? How should the adult children handle that? What do we do?
I'm going to chime in. You know, globally, everybody is having some feelings of uncertainty. And often when we feel uncertain comes a lot of other emotions, whether we're short patience, we're emotional, we could be feeling some depression, some anxiety, some worry. For the older adult, they've been through a lot. And I'm going to ask Michael to chime in at any time, please. That for them, this is like another thing, I'm using air quotes, where they're facing a unique situation. And I think that many older adults, it's not that they're not taking it seriously, but it's just another thing that they have been through in their 85, 80, 90 years of living. So I think it's really important to back up to where Michael was a minute ago, to make sure that when you're talking with your older adult parents, that you are talking. You know, you're not just bombarding them with questions. They don't want to feel like they are your child. To really ask them and listen to them. And there's nothing wrong with you getting a turn to talk to, where you can say, I need to tell you about what's going on in my house with the 3 kids, my husband, the dog, and everything that we are dealing with in the house. Seek their advice. Include them in some of the stressors in your life. It could be on some level, not that we want to compare apples and oranges and things like that, but your stress level potentially is at a higher point than the older adult.
Is that what you find, Michael?
Well, I also think that by sharing your own vulnerability, it allows them it gives them agency to be the parent and to care for you, which they have always done and lately have not been doing, because it kind of flips over and the adult child becomes the parent, and that kind of feels bad for the older adult. So it allows them to be a parent to you. And then it also allows them to validate your own feelings by saying, me too.
Right.
I felt that way on Tuesday. Today I'm doing okay. But Tuesday, oi. You know.
That's great advice to hear, that let them know about our vulnerabilities. Because I feel like sometimes we're pointing out what they're doing wrong as we parent them and micromanage them. And that really leads to an escalation of things. And while we're all going through this stress, the escalation, you know, adds to it really. So I think that's great.
Right. And we can act out those old patterns
Right,
from
right.
years and
Exactly.
years ago of dad, do you always have to be, you know, do you always have to say that, dad, or be that way, dad? Or, you know, it just flips backwards. And then everybody, no one is listening to anyone.
I
Well-
think letting them know that you're worried is reasonable and it's honest and it's something they can relate to.
How do you know when they just say, I'm okay, that they're telling you the truth?
Well, it's helpful in a Zoom call, right? You can see them, but when you can't see them, right? I think that you can ask, really, in a genuine way, not, I don't believe you, but really, are you okay? And then if they say yes, you can then being a little vulnerable yourself and saying, well, I'm not always okay.
Mhm.
So I'm, you know, I worry about the people that I love, and I love you so much. You know, so that really kind of letting them know this is coming from love. This
Mhm.
is not coming from your new parent who is, you know, looking down their nose at you.
I think that's so important to let them know it's coming from love. I want to touch on kind of the other side. You know, there's sort of the elder adults who are going on with their lives, and that's frustrating. And then we have kind of the other end of the spectrum, where we have these older adults who are living in nursing homes and hearing about all of the scary things that are going on in nursing homes, adults who are, you know, immune compromised, who are living in real fear right now. And I guess I'd like to hear from you what we can do to support them.
I'm going to kick off with the word isolation. And I think that that can be a profound experience for anybody, but for an older adult that at some point had a lot more activity based on where they were living, or they were able to go downstairs to the lobby and talk with other people or get out to a senior center. All of those activities have stopped. So I think as an adult child, it's important to keep your cool, let them know about your vulnerabilities, seek their advice, some of the things that we've already mentioned, but to help them establish a new sense of normal, because every day we all need to find a new normal, a new routine, something that gives them a sense of purpose, where they're feeling some level of, well, I was productive today. And in essence, it's occupying their time. So there's a lot of different suggestions that we can make. But before I get into some suggestions, Michael, is there something you want to add?
No, I'm really excited by that
Oh,
because
okay.
I really agree.
Okay, great.
Because, you know, Tuesday is Mahjong day,
Right.
and I'm not playing Mahjong on Tuesdays.
And Michael and I have
We're playing Mahjong on Tuesdays now?
I love a good name of Mahjong.
Right. As long as you have a good score.
Yeah.
So then let's dive into a little bit of some suggestions on how to assist in finding purpose. You know, not just keeping busy, but really enjoying what you're doing. So your adult parents or your older anyone in your life, they have a wealth of experience and knowledge. There are things that you don't know about. And let's just use the adult parent as our best example for the purpose of our discussion tonight. Ask them to organize some photographs that they have, because 9 out of 10, they've got 5 boxes of photographs someplace. And you're going to pick up those pictures and there's nothing written on the back. This isn't about putting them in a collage or a photo album. This is about, Mom, you know that box of pictures you have? I don't know who Aunt Sadie is, or I don't know who the family was that was your grandparents. Please, why don't you do me a favor and do some work? It would be such a joy for me to be able to know some documentation. So I would
Great
make a
idea.
suggestion of organizing photographs, and for your parents, if they could write down a story, a memory, whether it's about raising you, maybe when they got married, what their life was as compared to what their grandchildren's lives are like, just a short story, kind of going back to basics. And I would really encourage for the grandchildren, whether they're, teenagers and or young adults or adults that have launched that have had to come back, think of something like writing a letter. It sounds very antiquated at this point, very old fashioned, but there's still something to be said about getting something in the mail. So
Please,
do that.
please.
Do that. We all get pretty excited when that Amazon package arrives. So picture getting a letter that you didn't expect, especially from your 22-year-old grandchild. So write a letter. Write a
Yeah,
letter.
I really need to echo that point in that by and large, all of my clients, what brings them nachas is their grandchildren.
Mhm.
So getting something from their grandchild could make their month. I have a client, I love the story idea. I have a client who wrote a book, and her family is gathering on Zoom once a week, and she is reading a chapter of the book, and then the family is asking her questions about that chapter. And so whether it's on a Zoom call or it's just on a phone call, a lot of older adults have short-term memory issues, which stresses them out.
Sure.
And makes them feel less than. But their long-term memory is pretty solid. And in a family phone call or a Zoom call, asking for a story. Tell us about a summer day when you were a kid, or courting grandma, or tell us about when mom was born, and share a story with me, and able to share that with grandchildren and adult children, and kind of in a group phone call really can brighten and gives them agency as well. I have value in my family. I am a leader. I still am a leader of my family.
Yeah,
And
that's really a beautiful, beautiful idea. I do want to just touch base briefly about some of the things that JFCS is doing to provide support for people living in isolation. They have created some support groups specifically to address stress and people in stress during this pandemic. So there's a support group for medical professionals and their families. There's a support group for people dealing with financial stress, support group for the challenges of technology, and support group for people living in isolation. And today, JFCS launched a volunteer staffed line for people who are isolated and need to connect with people, to just call in. It's called a friendly call-in line. So if there are people who are lonely, they can just call and chat with someone.
I'm going to share that information real quick, Sheree.
Okay, great. But I do want to get back to this technology issue very quickly and ask you how we can help while we're doing a technology moment here, how we can help our older adults handle technology, because I think that can be so frustrating for them.
well, we don't want to stress out the older adult that potentially is stressed out to maybe just use their television or their phone. So for the older adult that is not inclined and does not have a smartphone and does not even, have Wi-Fi, resolve yourself that that's not going to happen as the adult child. Just get over it, okay? And move on and find other strategies like we just talked about and other fun things. You can drop off a puzzle to your parent and get the larger size pieces, common sense. Get the word seek and finds with the larger print. There's a lot of fun kinds of activities that you can literally drop off at their door. It's exciting to get a bag of goodies. They don't know what's going to be in the goodies. Now, for the older adult that does have some knowledge or forte and resource for the technology, I think the key word here is patience. You have to find the strategy, and maybe the adult child is not the best person. I think before we started our Zoom call, Sheree, you were explaining something that one of your children was doing to aid their grandparent. Why don't you share that right now?
So we have one grandparent, well, one couple that are technologically challenged. And when they have an issue, my daughter calls on FaceTime and then on one phone, and then that grandparent holds the phone so my daughter can see the other telephone and walk them through it. And yes, by the way, she has enormous patience.
Yes.
Much more, the grandchildren have much more patience than we do.
And they're better at it.
Oh yeah, that's true. And one thing that you suggested, which I actually thought was good, just to calm down the adults, is making sure that the older adult, our parents, have what they need, making sure they have their medications. There are all of these things that they cannot get now. And just knowing that they don't have to go out for their medicines, they don't have to go out for food, they don't have to go out for the basic needs, can be very reassuring for us just to know that they are taken care of.
So you're really kind of referring to stock them up with the essentials, as well as some treats and some other things. Get the magazine while you're standing at the supermarket checkout, the magazine that you would never buy, but you think, oh, look who's on the cover. My mother might actually enjoy reading this, or my father would laugh at this. Just throw it in the bag. It's an extra treat. And I think it puts the adult child, like you're taking it down a notch, because if you sit there in your mind, you're saying, well, they have extra Motrin. I got them Band-Aids. They have Neosporin. They have food. They really have everything. So you've done that. But I'm still biased where I think the adult child is stressing out and is less patient, more anxiety very often than the older adult right now, based on what's going on in that adult child's house.
It's almost like sending your parents that camp gift box.
Yeah, that's great.
Send them what they need, but you also throw in some fun things.
Right.
That's what that reminds me of. And that's great. I have not done that. So it's a good thing to think of.
And thinking of things that can help with mindfulness too. So adult coloring book, which kind of like brings your focus into this moment, right this second, right now, calms you down. Nail polish, self-care items, a facial mask, some foot cream, something that allows them to concentrate on them and self-care and getting them in the moment.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. And I think that I just want to ask one question. How do we make sure, as the adults, not the older adults yet, that we are staying on track and taking care of ourselves as we take care of them? I think it's the relationship dynamics. How do we not fall into those old patterns and habits?
I'm going to go back to the word that Michael used, vulnerability. We need to let our parents know what we are dealing with. A spouse could no longer be working. They could be furloughed. You've got your child, like we said, that we thought was launched, that moved back home because they were living in New York. And you have a child that is now also home from college, and a child that was supposed to be potentially graduating from high school this year. No prom, no final lacrosse banquet. I mean, a multitude of milestones that each one of our children are not experiencing, which profoundly affects us as parents. Let your parent you a little bit. Let them parent you a little bit.
Yeah. Deborah, do you have any, did you get any questions online?
I actually do. I have a couple questions. The first question that we've received is, how do you talk to your parent that is angry and they're hard to talk to?
Okay, so I would jump into DBT land, into dialectical behavioral therapy. So DBT.
I have no idea what that
it's
He's
an
gonna tell you.
evidence-based practice. So they love acronyms. I don't know if anyone was on our call last week, but I talked about a couple then too. But the GIVE acronym, which is really about interpersonal effectiveness. So DBT breaks into 4 different modules. There's mindfulness, emotional regulation, distress tolerance, and interpersonal effectiveness. And in interpersonal effectiveness, the GIVE skill talks about being gentle. So really going into this, getting yourself centered. I'm talking to dad. I'm calling dad right now. I can't just pick up the phone and call dad. Got to take a minute, got to breathe. I got to center myself. I need to put my feet on the floor. I need to sit in the chair. I need to breathe. I need to come from a place of love. Remind yourself to come from a place of love. So that the G in GIVE is gentle. I want to remain gentle. And even if you write these 4 words down on a piece of paper, so I'm going to remain gentle. The I is I'm going to be interested. So I'm going to be focused on what my dad is saying and what mom is saying. I'm going to be interested in their opinion. Because a lot of times as adult children, we can be like, that's the way it is. Well, actually, that's taking, that I'm not your child. I am your parent. So now they can't hear you anymore. They've shut you off. So being interested in their opinion. The V is validate. So when your parent does open up and tell you something that's going on with them, especially right now around feelings or a problem that they're having, and you might, in your head, you're thinking, I know how to fix it. I have a fix for this. I know the answer to this. I know the fix to this. Before you fix it, validate it. Validate the way they feel. So we're going to be gentle. We're going to be interested in what they have to say. We're going to validate how they feel. And then we're going to remind ourselves again to be easy. So that when we do give them the change talk and we give them the answer, and this is how to fix it, we're going to be easy with that. And we're not going to make any demands.
And
But
then
really validating feelings. It's all about validating.
wow.
That's amazing. I wrote down everything that every time you speak, Michael, I want to write everything down.
And taking notes the whole time.
I mean, I guess that would also help for parents that are also feeling overly anxious or other things like that as well.
Very much so.
Okay, great. Another question that we received is, what about the dynamic for those that have chosen to bring their parents home? Like they're actually in our home with us. So that's has its own set of
Yeah.
stuff.
Brenda, do you want to jump on that?
Yeah, I will. Absolutely. Thanks, Michael. I'm thinking of the similarity to what you've done now that potentially one of your young adult or adult children have come home. You've almost had to redefine the house. You know, maybe the room where the one child stayed that was in college, that's pretty easy. They're going right back into their room because they would have been coming home in May or June. But for the child that you only have a few boxes secretly left in the garage, the child that has come back home, you've redefined the space. And I think that that's really important, that everybody has some designated space. There's a sense of privacy, a sense of control, like this is my space, this is where I'm going to put this, nobody's going to move this. Or people are even taking turns because, well, that's the best room in the house, or that's the room that's got the best television. So I think it's about getting together as a family and defining the space, and potentially, again, involving the older adult. If your mom is not going to schlep up and down the steps and pretend to do the laundry, we understand that. However, can she sit on the sofa and help fold the towels? Can she help with some of the household tasks, including peeling some vegetables as she's sitting down at the kitchen table? Or for a parent that still is able and capable to cook, I think it would give them a lot of nachas, a lot of joy to actually do some food preparation and maybe even cook one of their specialty dishes that, again, let's preface, the adult child has gone to the store for, not the older adult. But again, to keep them to be an integral part of the family. Give them a voice, give them some space, and give them an opportunity to share something that they do well.
The only other thing I would add is a safety thing, which a lot of older adults are up once, twice, 3 times in the night to go to the bathroom. And in their own apartment, they can do it in the dark. And now they're in a different home. They're not in their apartment anymore. So making sure there's a great lit pathway for them to be able to find the bathroom, or the bathroom light is on, so that there aren't any accidents in the middle of the night.
Good point.
The only thing I would say, the only thing I would like to share is that we've had so many comments about people just loving the suggestions, the coloring books, that just all the different things that you are saying, and people just, it's really resonating with a great number of people. And so I don't want to read every comment online, but you both should go and look, because it's just really lovely. I do have one final question, actually. What about a situation where the virus is now in the living facility where your parent is living?
Oh, that's tough.
And you're not sure that your parent is taking enough precautions? How do you have that conversation?
That's really been a challenge, as we've been hearing in many geographies about facilities needing to shut down even because they don't have enough staff, or the incidences of COVID-19 are so great. What I'd like to start off by saying is to try to connect with the social worker or the director of nursing, some designated go-to person at the facility. I have gotten feedback from several adult children that those people indeed at their jobs are overwhelmed with the amount of adult children that want to connect. So ultimately, the best bet, again, is to try to make sure that you can have at least the minimum telephone contact. Most facilities have telephones in the room. So if an adult parent is literally being quarantined, even if it's for their own safety, use the telephone. It feels like an antiquated mechanism for us that are, constantly using technology, but it is a way to connect or to seek out the support of an individual at that facility that can maybe once a week even arrange to give you a Zoom call, or they have their own iPhone and they can get mom on the phone. But I have heard from adult children recently that their parents have literally had to be physically moved out of a facility into another. And that is just no easy thing to deal with. That's really not easy. Let me acknowledge that, please.
Truly. And if you can do that, we're all going to pull up outside. We're outside your window, Mom.
Yeah.
Because it really, talk about isolated. If you're isolated in your room, you can't even go down the hall. You can't get your mail. You can't go into the laundry room. You can't go to the coffee shop. You're really, it's really, really scary.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I am going to implement so many of your suggestions, and I appreciate your taking the time to have this discussion, which, by the way, this will be on JFCS's website. So if you tuned in a little late and you want to see the beginning, or if you have friends who you would like to share this with, you can watch the entire thing from the beginning. And you're amazing. Thank you for doing what you're doing. I hope everyone who's watching stays well and that their family stays safe, home, and healthy during this pandemic. Paula Goldstein, the CEO of JFCS, just had a beautiful article in our Jewish Exponent, and she talked about how special the people are who go into social work because it is a helping field. And when I hear from the two of you, you really reflect those values. And thank you so much for what you're doing and for helping us all get through this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I just want to share very quickly the contact information should you need support or want to see what JFCS has available in terms of resources for those affected by COVID in a variety of ways. All our support group information is on there as well. So that's our phone number. We do have extended hours right now, and that is the web link. And now we're back.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheree.
Well,
you're amazing.
Be well. Thank you.